Hello again, everyone. Welcome back to the channel. This is Comic Kid here again, and today we have another movie review for you guys. My group and I, you've heard them on the channel before. We have Jordan and Shoaib again, and this time we are also joined by my lovely fiance, Des. And we just got back from Birds of Prey and the Fantabulous Emancipation of one Harley Quinn. That's the title, yes. We literally saw it about an hour ago, and we've had a little bit of time to collect our thoughts, discuss it amongst ourselves. And so, yeah. What were everyone's initial thoughts?
I really like the Harley Quinn character based on Suicide Squad, but I really didn't like Suicide Squad, so I was pretty apprehensive going into this movie. But I think I came out liking it a lot more than I thought.
I definitely thought that, bouncing off your Suicide Squad thought, I thought this was going to be paced similarly and was worried about it because Suicide Squad was unnecessarily chaotic with its pacing. And whilst this was a little bit chaotic, it fit the general vibe of the movie, and I never felt like I was being jerked around. I felt like I was following the plot still. And I wasn't bouncing a lot.
Well, like most people who've seen the first trailer, and maybe a few after trailers, I didn't know what to think of this movie. DC hasn't had the best track record, but again, the last couple movies have been pretty good though. So.
Yeah, I definitely understand where y'all are coming from. I know a lot of people thought there was going to be way too much like Harley Quinn in this. I personally had pretty low expectations going in. It just looked like every other kind of like Marvel movie to me, and so I was like, it might be hit or miss, like we'll see. And I wouldn't say I absolutely loved it, but I was pleasantly surprised. So
I mean, see, I'm also a massive Harley Quinn fan, and I know that I'm in the minority of this group of that. So, like, looking at the trailers and being like, this is a Harley Quinn movie, I was like, woohoo! But I can also understand how everybody was like, oh, Birds of Prey, but it's only Harley Quinn. What's going on?
I feel like that was something that, like, a lot of people initially complained about with the trailers that they actually pulled off surprisingly well. Was, yes, like, the movie mostly revolves around Harley. She is a narrator. But I thought everyone did have a pretty good balance of screen time, with the exception of Huntress. I felt like she could have been in there a bit more. Everyone else seemed to be in there a little bit more, but the pacing was fine. It was, in my opinion, a lot better than Suicide Squad. So, yeah.
I did think Huntress's, subplot was a little bit weak. They kind of just tossed her in, and I understand that they felt she needed to be there, but like you said, she could have used some more screen time to explain why she was there instead of just being like, and Huntress is here!
Because I do remember originally they were going to have Barbara Gordon in this movie, but then at some point they cut her. I don't know if Huntress was always supposed to be in, but I could see them replacing Batgirl with Huntress at some point. I'm not sure. That's all speculation.
I honestly feel like whatever they do with Batgirl going forward, or at least in Birds of Prey, is going to be affected by Batman. Sure. We all know that Jeffrey Wright is replacing J.K. Simmons as Jim Gordon, and so I think they wanted to hold off on casting a Batgirl until they knew what their plan with Batman was officially. That's just my guess. So in regards to the acting specifically, I thought everyone did a pretty good job all around. I mean, like, it is definitely a more fun movie. It's not like any performance is going to be super powerful, but I thought there were some really strong moments. The woman who plays Black Canary, I know she's not a huge name. She hasn't been in a whole lot, but I thought she did really well. If that was actually her singing, then, like, yeah, she did a really good job.
Yeah, Jernese Smollett-Bell. I'm probably saying that wrong. But...
Yeah, she and Cassandra Cain were the only two, like, main cast members that I just didn't recognize. But I thought both of them did a good job. Ewan McGregor, I think we'd all agree, did fantastic.
I mean, he's pretty darn versatile.
He's probably the best acting in this movie.
I think probably arguably the best villain that the DCU movies have had. So
I liked watching him progressively get a little bit nuttier.
Yeah,
instead of just starting out at level 10.
for sure. I've never seen him do stuff like this. Most people know him as Obi-Wan, but like if you watch like The Island or what was the horror movie he did?
Doctor Strange.
Doctor Sleep.
Doctor Strange is a different movie.
I haven't seen Trainspotting, but I think people who have seen Trainspotting will see a lot of similarities. I'm pretty sure, I haven't seen it, but I'm pretty sure he acts crazy like he does in this movie a lot, in that movie.
Okay.
So, I could be wrong. Actually.
Well, regardless, he did a great job, and I feel like in regards to Margot Robbie's performance, like if you liked her in Suicide Squad, she carries the same energy, and it's a very like positive energy. Like she is a good aspect of the film, at least in my opinion. I wouldn't say she really brought anything new to the character in her performance this time around, but I'm very comfortable with her in the role, and I do think she makes a good Harley. So.
Yeah, she was a fantastic Harley in Suicide Squad.
Yeah. So Margot Robbie also produced this movie. So the whole thing of this movie had too much Harley Quinn, I think like this movie only got made because Harley Quinn was popular. So it's sort of course.
At the moment, and I know I've already told you guys this, but I believe Warner Brothers' plan is if Birds of Prey does well critically and financially, they're going to greenlight a Gotham City Sirens movie, which David Ayer was attached to, is still attached to, might not be, I'm not sure. But he's supposed to be coming back in order to do Gotham City Sirens, and then they're going to do a third one that's supposed to be Birds of Prey versus the Sirens. And I think that's a good idea, personally. I think it's a good way to kind of do a Harley Quinn trilogy while bringing in a lot of new characters also. If they want to, they could do a solo Birds of Prey sequel without her now that they've established these characters. Batman's coming out soon, and so if they want to introduce Barbara Gordon in that, they can bring her into the sequel for Birds of Prey. Like, they have options for sure.
I think another thing that really helped this movie be good, I think, is a female director,
and a female writer.
Yeah, it's always a little weird when we have a very female-centric movie, but there's not a lot of female director or writers or whatever.
It's easy to tell if you're a female in the audience too. Like if it's like a female-centric movie and they're all female actresses, and then like it's a male directing it, like they do stuff and you're like, no, that's not. Oh, okay, she's all right, I guess. Like she wouldn't be doing that, but okay, I guess. But this was very they're we're not spoiling things right now. They're like very female centric without being like fuck the patriarchy, kill all men, like straight up like flying the pink flag or anything.
Yeah.
But I definitely think it was a nice way to be like, and here's our female team, and they don't need to be supported by a man. Like, and we're not gonna make that point 98 times. We're just gonna make it once and then move on.
For sure. No, and I know Captain Marvel caught a lot of flack for being like a female focused thing, and all the like internet trolls were ragging on that, but I feel like it's just a lot easier to like this movie just because it's a lot more fun. It definitely doesn't feel like it has any sort of agenda, but it is still a very solid, like, I guess, femme power film, so.
I definitely think Robbie's a good, kind of like you guys were saying, like, centric force as well. Like, she's probably a lot of the draw for this movie. She's probably going to be a lot of the, like, anchor for this movie. And so, like you kind of said, I can see them doing almost a Harley Quinn trilogy and using her as the anchor to bring in a lot more female characters to the DCU instead of just having it be anchored completely and totally on, like, Affleck and Cavill as Batman and Superman.
Yeah.
Like, because right now they've got Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman, and then they have Harley, but that's kind of the two biggest female names other than the side characters they've had that nobody has too much interest in.
Alrighty, so moving on to action. What were everyone's initial thoughts on like the stunts and all the like fun bits of the
So
film.
still non-spoiler. I think the action was done really well. I thought there's a lot of close cuts. None of the action seemed out of focus or out of focus on purpose. But it also did have that superhero feel where they would do things that no normal human would be able to do, but it wasn't too over the top.
Someone correct me if I'm wrong here, but Robbie does most of her own stunts too.
I think she does.
Like I know some of them that she steps back on, but she does most of her own stunt work. And I remember hearing that in Suicide Squad and them being like, yeah, she insisted on doing it herself in heels. And watching some of what she was doing, I was like, honestly, that's flat out impressive because this is probably something you could do, but you'd have to be, like you said, it's almost superhuman, but basically you just have to be super specially trained to do it, or, you know, on a movie set where 98 people can help you out if you happen to fall and break your face. But I mean, definitely, like, it had the comic book feel to it because they would get real close in and, like, on top of the action, and they wouldn't, like, pull back and be like, oh, what, did she punch him? I don't know.
Oh, I thought the action was a strong point of this movie. Got great cuts to the action, great action scenes. There's a few times I was like, that was pretty badass. No spoilers. We'll talk more in the spoilers about some badass action scenes, but no, it was definitely one of the stronger points of this movie.
I thought the action was good. That's really all I have to say about it. I wasn't like absolutely blown away by anything. Without getting into the spoiler stuff, all the like fights did feel kind of like natural. I do think being R-rated really helped the film's action.
Definitely.
Because it let them do a lot of really cool stuff, and like there were several moments in the films where you're just like, oh, and so.
But I do also think the R rating wasn't pushed too much.
Mm-hmm. It's definitely not a hard R.
No,
like
it's
aside
very-
from some F-bombs and like other curse words and like some blood, like it's a pretty soft R. Like there's very little like sexual anything in the movie.
There almost isn't any. It's all like wall art.
Yeah.
There's no like raunchy sex scene where they walk through the stripper club and there be titties flying. Like it's classier in that way. Don't get me wrong, I like titties flying, but like, you know.
It's a mostly violence rated R.
Yeah, definitely.
Which it does show a lot in the action scenes, I feel like. Yeah.
I definitely agree that I think that the action would have been extremely underwhelming if they didn't have that R rating. And I mean, I guess you could count that against them, but I count it as a pro. Because they took the R rating and actually used it to do something instead of just like throw a butt on the screen.
Yeah. Alrighty. Now, in regards to accuracy, how many of y'all have read a Birds of Prey comic before?
I read some Birds of Prey in the past 4 or 5 years. Nothing recently. So I have some knowledge of it.
I myself have read a lot of the more recent stuff, and then like I think an arc or two from the Gail Simone. It might have been from the Chuck Dixon run. I wouldn't consider myself an expert on the characters, but I am pretty familiar with them all. I've read a bunch of other stuff with all of these characters in them as well. And it's definitely not the most comic book accurate film, but it does show a sense of faithfulness to the characters. Huntress was really the one I wanted to see more of because they just kind of give you her origin very quick and then they kind of throw her into the rest of it. And I know a lot of people are upset that they, like, Renee Montoya isn't the question in any of the trailers or anything.
And if you're not well versed on who she is, like I had to ask you after the film who she was because I wasn't aware of who she was already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So if you don't already know who she is, you don't already know who she is. She's just some random cop that they tossed in the mix.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I felt like.
At the end of the movie, I was like, okay, so who's she supposed to be? And he was like, question, and I was like,
I mean, I felt like her character was one of the more weaker points of the movie. But on accuracy, I mean, the only thing I've read is with Harley Quinn in it is really Injustice. And I mean, she plays a pretty big role in one of the years. I can't remember which year, but I mean, I felt like her character was pretty accurate in that comic.
Yeah, I feel like the biggest inaccuracy, without spoiling anything, is Cassandra Cain. And it's not that they just were like, oh, she sounds like a cool character, let's just throw her in. Like, you can tell they tried to do her justice, but some of the changes, I guess they thought felt necessary for the sake of the story. I might disagree with that, but I wouldn't say that this one major character inaccuracy is enough to absolutely ruin the movie by any means. And with someone like Renee Montoya, they still have plenty of time to establish her and develop her further. It's basically an introduction to everyone, which is kind of what it is supposed to be. So, of course, you can expect her to be the question in some later movie.
I also have read through a lot of the Harley Quinn stuff, especially the New 52 stuff, where she's kind of going off on her own. She's ditching Joker. She's being more individualistic. It's where the beaver comes in, which I'm sure seemed really random to anybody who wasn't well versed on that. I'd say her character in general was pretty accurate to what they were trying to source her from. And like watching some of the scenes, I could see the nods they were making at portions of her book that I would read through, and that I was like, hey, look, like that's pretty cool. Like, I know she did this, I know she did that. And like watching them walk through like her little, I guess, quote unquote world kind of walked you back through that arc in her comics where she was like, I'm ditching the Joker and I'm going to go be my own independent woman. And this is the life I'm making for myself. And then you kind of got to get little nods at that as she went through. So, I mean, I'd say she's pretty accurate. I know you touched on Orphan being not so accurate, and I'm not as well versed in her as I am in the others. I don't know how they're gonna. I mean, they might not try to, but I don't know how they would even backpedal into her accuracy, though, because I think they're just gonna completely off-script her. I don't think there's a way for them to backpedal and be like, oh, ho, ho, she's actually a pro fighter.
No, like, I agree. I definitely get where you're coming from, and like, yeah, Cassandra Cain is probably the biggest inaccuracy, but she's also one of the more minor characters in DC in general, and I know a lot of people don't know her, so while I would love to see her become a version of Orphan later down the line, I think that's going to be the hardest like thing for them to correct, like you said. So alrighty, now going into jokes. Now, y'all are gonna have a lot stronger opinions about this than I am. I find jokes in a lot of comic book movies to be just kind of like bland and flat and like, I don't know, all kind of repetitive. So I typically find humor in comic book movies just has little to no effect on me. This movie did get me to laugh a few times, but y'all were cracking up far more frequently than I was, so y'all go ahead.
I think this movie, I don't think it has a lot of gut-busting jokes or anything. I think they have a lot of shocking humor, stuff you wouldn't expect happen. But overall, I don't think the humor was like the strongest point, but I don't think they tried to make it the strongest point either, so.
I mean, I'm easy to amuse, so I had a blast, but I also know that I'm easy to amuse, and I understand that most of the time you sit through a comic book movie and you just kind of like chuckle once or twice, and I spend the entire time like laughing my butt off. So I'm easy to amuse. My bar is pretty low. Like I'll chuckle at pretty much anything. So I mean, I had fun, but that's not really a good judgment.
I would say I am like a pretty diverse person when it comes to comedy. Marvel movies make me laugh like a little kid. I'll watch a Seth Rogen movie and I'll laugh up to that. I could watch something like Hot Fuzz and laugh to that. But to be honest, this movie it had a few chuckles. I want to say maybe 2, 3 throughout the whole movie. But outside that, it didn't really. Maybe because a lot of people would compare it to Deadpool, which it's not the same humor as Deadpool, I would say. But a lot of the trailers tried giving you that vibe a little bit, I feel like. And if you're going in thinking that, you're going to be sorely disappointed.
I think Deadpool's a lot raunchier.
Yeah, Deadpool I feel like is making fun of the genre a lot, while this one, it didn't really have that feel. I don't think that was their goal, was to make fun of superhero films or anything.
I get what you mean. Like, it is self-aware, but it's not like a parody or a spoof like Deadpool was. So,
and Deadpool isn't always like that, but I feel like a lot, like the first movie especially, is more like that. The second Deadpool just strays away from that more, but I still don't think they're not good comparisons. I don't think they're
for
pretty
sure. Alrighty, so before we get into our spoiler reviews, we were going to go ahead and rate the film, and we graded it on a scale of 1 to 10, and so between everyone, it got 2 7s and 2 8s, so it averaged to a 7.5 from us. So I feel like it's safe to say that everyone like did enjoy it, but didn't like absolutely love it. Am I wrong?
I mean, I had a blast, but I'm bipartial. I love Harley Quinn.
I
was just happy to watch Robbie do her thing.
Right. It's a fun action film, a good superhero film. I don't think it does anything super like groundbreaking, but it's a fun movie to watch.
I'm curious to see how my opinion might change upon a second watch,
Right.
just because several Marvel movies, like the Avengers especially, like the more I watch it, it's just like the more like things I find to dislike about it, and I don't know why, but I have a feeling this might be the case with this one, which is why I gave it a 1 point lower than others.
I could see the length of this movie really helping with rewatchability, because this movie is under 2 hours, I think an hour 45.
That sounds right.
And I think that might help a lot with rewatchability, because I don't think there was really any big part of that movie that slowed to a halt or anything. And I think it's because of the time. So that may help in rewatchability eventually.
I definitely think it helped because, well, I definitely think it went that direction too, pacing, because of the narrator. With Harley Quinn narrating, I don't think you could have gone slowly.
Right.
I think it would have felt so awkward and off. With her narrating, you need that almost borderline chaotic, like, quick pacing, and I think had they tried to be like, and here's the slow part of the movie, everyone would have been like, what? What's happening? Is she having a stroke? I don't know.
The biggest problem I had probably with this movie is the character development. I mean, if you don't like Suicide Squad's character development, it does slightly better than that, but not much better in my opinion. If they did do a sequel, I don't know if I'd even care about the characters enough outside just some of the actors, but I felt like a lot of character stories were rushed, and I didn't know much about any of them. As a person who didn't read a lot of the comics, I couldn't tell you anything outside Huntress a little bit.
Alrighty, guys. Well, I think that's everything we have for y'all today. Thank y'all so much for listening, and I will hopefully will see you all again real soon.